You're listening to Ship History Radio from the Steamship Historical Society of America. Through recording, preserving, and educating, our mission is to share the impact of engine-powered vessels, their crews, and their passengers with future generations. My name is Amy Bacciari, and I'm the Education Director. In this episode, you'll hear an interview from Brigitte Bentele about her experience immigrating to the United States in the 1950s on board the SS United States. This interview was conducted for the program SHIPS, which stands for Ships, History, Influence, and Power Series, thanks to a generous contribution from Ted Scull. You can learn more about SHIPS, watch films, and see primary sources at shiphistory.org/ships. To learn more about our organization, visit sshsa.org.
My name is Brigitte Bentele, and I was born August 26, 1944 in Heilbronn, Germany.
Can you tell me a little bit about what was Germany like at that time?
I don't remember. I mean, my sisters who were older said that during the first 2 years of my life, I was living basically in the basement of my aunt's house because there weren't the materials to rebuild. And her house had been completely destroyed in Heilbronn. So that's something that I actually didn't learn until I was an adult. I didn't know that. In fact, when I was born, the hospital itself was destroyed, half of it, but my mother was in the other half. So,
oh my goodness,
I'm lucky to be here.
Yes, you are.
And again, it's something that I didn't learn until I was an adult.
Can you tell me a little bit about why your family decided to leave Germany?
Yes. All the moves that we made were because of my father's career. He was an aeronautical engineer, and the opportunities were different in different countries. So actually, we moved in 1947. He had an opportunity to go to England and work for a company there. And it was just meant to be for 6 months, but it extended. And so after he'd been there for a while, he brought his family over. So we moved there in 48. We were in England, and then we moved back to Germany in 52, and then came to the US in 56.
So you moved around quite a bit when you were little, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And you know, for a young person, it was adventurous. For my older sister, it was a little more difficult. When we went to England, I was too young to go to school. My two siblings went to school. My mother didn't know English, so they essentially brought the English home.
Oh, wow. So did you start learning English then from your sisters in England?
Yeah. When we moved back to Germany, I forgot my English because I was 8. And then by the time we came to America, I think it was probably easier to come back, but I didn't remember it.
Can you talk a little bit about what the opportunity was like in the United States and how they decided to leave Germany again?
My father actually wrote an autobiography at some point in the 90s for this aeronautical organization, SAE, and it's through that really, which I ended up actually typing my older sister edited, you know, so that I learned some of the things that, you know, as somebody who goes to work and then comes home to be with his family, I didn't really know that much about his career. Was a shy man to begin with, and then he just focused on family when he was home. So it was opportunities really. And in the 50s, I think there were a lot of engineers that were the brain drain. And so he had come over to the US about a year before when the company wanted him. And then I think it took about a year for him to decide. Plus, he had to get clearance, you know, for the kinds of things that they were doing and a visa and all of that. I think it was also not an easy decision for him, particularly for my mother. I think she suffered a lot by having to leave her parents. And every time she was transplanted with these 3 girls, you know, and I think it was hard on her. And so I don't know if it was just the visa process or whether it was their hesitation about it, or I do know that I was asked to keep it a secret once they told us. And I don't know why that was, which wasn't easy for an 11-year-old.
Oh, no. I know you were young at the time, but do you remember what it was like getting to the ship? Where did you leave from? That sort of thing?
Yeah, I definitely remember that. I mean, it was a big thing. We had to move all of our things. I remember a party where our house was completely empty and the adults were saying goodbye basically. And then I also remember a lot of family and friends being at the train station in Stuttgart, which is where we were living. And we took the train from there to Paris. And in Paris, I remember going to the Louvre and going to the Eiffel Tower. We were there not that long, maybe a day or two. And then we took another train to Le Havre, which is where the boat left.
Right.
Yeah, I remember those very clearly. And as I said, for me, it was very exciting. I have one sister who's a year older, and then another one who's 5 years older. And she was very, very angry with my parents for leaving at, she was 17. So
that's hard.
It's not easy. She had to leave her friends, and she had a boyfriend, and he was very, very unhappy. For me and my sister, who's just a year older, it was a big adventure, and we loved the idea of it,
I'm curious as to why they chose the ship that they did, or the United States lines.
I don't know why, but I do know that my father kept saying, it's the fastest ship. It's the fastest ship. It's the one that will get us there the fastest. But that's the only thing. So I don't know if that was the reason that they picked that one. It could have also been the company, that made the arrangements. I don't know.
It also seems fun that you got to ride on the SS United States coming to the United States. It seems kind of fitting. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you remember meeting people on the ship?
I don't remember other children that much. I remember doing things with my sister, like we would play shuffleboard. I remember an emergency drill, I guess. I remember there were movies that we could go to. I remember actually there was a dinner table that we sat at with some other people, and there was a African-American waiter who just had the most beautiful smile and was just the nicest person. And I remember him very fondly because we had dinner every night with that. My mother at one point played some, I don't know, maybe blackjack or bingo or something where she won $20 or something like that. Little things like that I remember. I remember it being fun, walking around on the deck. I do remember very distinctly the day we arrived, on the morning that we arrived, and it was very early, 6 or even earlier, I don't know. And everybody was woken up and went to the deck to see the Statue of Liberty, And I mean, I still get chills because everybody was just in such awe of that sight. And it was sort of misty and foggy. And I just remember everybody out there and, sort of leaning out and looking at it. And often over the years, when I used to live in Baltimore for a while and in Washington, and I would think about relatives sometimes coming to visit, and they would come by plane, and then especially in New York in the 70s when, the trip from the airport through the Bronx and all the boarded up windows and how different that experience was for them than it was for us, to see this site.
You talked a little bit about what it was like coming to New York, but do you remember what it was like getting off the ship? Did you have to do some health inspections, things like that?
I don't remember that. One of my most startling memories is of the yellow cabs, because, cars in Europe at the time, they were gray, they were maybe maroon, they were black, but nothing like a yellow, and just to see so many of these yellow cabs was amazing. And I remember waiting quite a bit to get off the ship. And then I assume we got into one of those yellow cabs. I don't remember. When we came, we actually stayed in a hotel until my parents found a home. And that was several months. I even remember my sister and I leaning out the window, and she would count the cabs and I would count the cars, and we would see who would have more, or the other way around. Cabs made a big impression on me. We did quite a bit of sort of sightseeing that summer, and it was so hot compared to what Germany would get during the summer. I mean, it was so hot and humid that sometimes my mother would drop us off at RCA theater, and we would watch a film 3 times through. They would just keep playing it, and it was cool in there. So it was an interesting way of getting here. It was also the summer that the Andrea Doria and the Stockholm crashed.
Wow.
I don't know. Yeah. And so one of the things I remember is, so the Stockholm was brought to the New York Harbor, and it was sort of cut off. And I remember seeing that, and kind of, I just remember that was a pretty
scary thing to see, I would think, as a child, especially just coming off of an ocean liner and being like, "Ooh, I'm glad that didn't happen to us."
No, right.
Coming here and you're just 11, having to start a new school and things like that, was that challenging or?
It was. I mean, we moved to New Jersey, and primarily because of the school systems. My parents really wanted a good public school for us. And and I remember the first day of school, I went into the 7th grade, and in Germany at the time, I don't even know if that's true still, but if a teacher addresses you, you immediately stand up to acknowledge that, that you're being spoken to. And I remember the first day when I came to school and she introduced me, and when I heard my name, I stood up, and everybody laughed. I do remember that.
Oh,
it was so humiliating. But I can understand why, it must have been strange, but I didn't feel people were cruel. And I remember she assigned somebody to help me around because my English was not, good enough to understand a lot. I think it came back relatively quickly, but it was a challenging first few months, I think. It's something that, when I was a math teacher and math department head too, and at one point we were hiring a Turkish immigrant who had an accent, and among Americans, there's a fear that especially younger kids wouldn't be able to understand him, and I just knew, that accent would go primarily within months, and it's that kind of experience that I think I had because of my own experience.
I was curious. I know you mentioned earlier that your mother had a hard time sort of being transplanted to all these different locations based on your dad's job. What was it like for her? Do you remember in America?
I mean, not just America, but more so there than when we went to England is that she had to leave her parents who were aging, and she knew that she would not be able to see them again. And in fact, her sister, my mother's parents lived with her sister, and her sister remained angry with my mother for the rest of her life, for leaving them. And it was about I think less than a year that both of them had died.
After you came to America, it was about a year. Yeah. That must have been very hard for her.
It was terrible because it wasn't at a time when it was easy to fly back to Germany. First of all, we couldn't afford it, and secondly, it just wasn't that accessible. So she had a hard time. I think there was also still German resentment, at the time, and she devoted her whole life basically to my father and to us children. And then as we grew older, of course, it was harder for her to find a life. And again, I think generationally probably, and maybe from a European point of view, women didn't go to work, and so she didn't have a career after she married. I think she was very proud of my father and of us, but I think she always felt inferior. But she was extraordinarily smart and very gifted she made all of our clothes for the three girls. Yeah. And I think, both of them lived through two wars, and the Second World War for her was not easy, obviously, trying to protect family. She had a hard time. I think she was also happy to be in the US. She played tennis and had good friends and things. But
did she ever talk about what the war was like? Because
something neither of them did. I think, and actually, my father at one point mentioned that when he was growing up, he remembers nobody talking about the First World War. It's just something that you want to put behind you. And the destruction was there. When we came back from England, there's still so many buildings that were not rebuilt. So it wasn't as if we couldn't see the after effects of it.
But if that contributed to their thought process about leaving, being reminded of that kind of hard time to live through war and to still see all that destruction, I'm sure was traumatic.
I suspect it was. But I think without the career opportunity, that was really what was driving. And some of his colleagues had already immigrated to the US. So he already knew some people who had good experiences here, my father.
Did you ever go back to visit Germany as a family?
Okay.
Yeah.
Not as a family, no. I went back during college the first time, and then I went back maybe 2 or 3 other times.
And did you see family there, or?
Yeah. My most recent trip I did, actually, my father really wanted his ashes taken to the town where he lived, which is where he had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. The 2 brothers, one of them actually in 1925, he came through Ellis Island and went out west. And the 3 sons all left, and the 3 women all stayed in that farm town. So every time he would go back, he would be with them, and so the last time I went with my sister, and we took his ashes and had a little ceremony there. But there's something about family, even though my language isn't that good anymore in terms of German, there's something accepting about family no matter what. And so it's quite wonderful to go back.
Thanks for tuning in to Ship History Radio. We hoped you enjoyed hearing about Brigitte Bentele's memories of immigrating to the United States. Visit shiphistory.org/ships to view more oral histories on the topic of immigration. This episode was produced by the Steamship Historical Society of America. Learn more about our organization at sshsa.org.